The sharp, booming laughter of Admiral Sterling reverberated through the main hallway of Naval Base Coronado, slicing through the daily bustle like a knife. "Hey, sweetheart," his voice projected across the gleaming floor tiles. "What's your call sign, Mop Girl?" A circle of senior officers around him burst into chuckles. Commander Sharp smirked. Lieutenant Choi crossed his arms with a self-satisfied grin, and Chief Mendez nearly bent over laughing. Over 40 personnel in the hallway, SEALs, instructors, and administrative staff, turned their heads to watch. The woman they were ridiculing didn't look up. Petite, standing perhaps 5'4", and wearing a standard-issue maintenance uniform that draped loosely over her slight frame, she continued pushing her mop in steady, rhythmic strokes. Her dark hair was pulled back into a plain ponytail. Nothing about her indicated she was anything other than what she appeared to be, just another unseen worker keeping the base sanitary. But Master Sergeant Miller, standing near the equipment counter, felt a cold chill run down his spine. He had seen that stance before, the specific way she held the mop handle, the shoulder angle, the weight distribution. It was incorrect for cleaning. It was perfect for combat. "Come on, don't be shy," Sterling pressed, moving closer. "Everyone here has a call sign. What's yours? Squeegee? Floor wax?" More laughter rippled through the onlookers. The woman finally paused. She straightened slowly, and for a split second, something flashed across her face. It wasn't anger or embarrassment. It was something colder, something that made Miller's hand unconsciously twitch toward his sidearm. Then it vanished. She lowered her head and resumed mopping. However, in the next 20 minutes, everything they thought they understood would be dismantled. Miller observed as the woman's eyes scanned the corridor, in a pattern he identified instantly. Left corner, high right corner, low center, mass exits, potential threats. 3-second intervals. It was perfect tactical scanning, the kind drilled into elite operators until it became as natural as breathing. She wasn't looking at dust on the floor. She was maintaining situational awareness of every person, every movement, and every potential danger in her vicinity. Commander Victoria Sharp noticed Miller's focus and misread it completely. "Sergeant Miller defending the help now?" Her voice held the specific cruelty of someone who had fought hard for her rank and resented anyone she viewed as weak. Maybe she needs a strong man to speak for her. The woman's jaw tightened almost invisibly. Still, she remained silent. Lieutenant James Choi pushed off the wall where he had been leaning. "Actually, I'm curious now." He motioned toward the weapons rack visible through the nearby armory window. "Hey you, maintenance lady, since you're cleaning our facilities, maybe you can tell us what those are called." He pointed at 3 rifles mounted in a row. The woman looked up slowly, her dark eyes unremarkable at first glance, locking onto the weapons with an intensity that made Miller's breath hitch. When she spoke, her voice was soft but distinct. "M4 carbine with ACOG optic, M16A4 with standard iron sights, HK416 with EOTech holographic sight." Choi's smirk faltered. Those weren't the colloquial names. Those were the proper military designations. "Lucky guess," Mendez sneered, stepping forward. He was a bulky man accustomed to using his size to intimidate. "Probably heard some Marine use those words." As if to emphasize his dismissal, he deliberately kicked over her mop bucket. Gray water spilled across the polished floor. What happened next occurred so rapidly that several witnesses would later debate the exact sequence of events. The bucket tipped. A metal clipboard fell from a nearby desk, tumbling toward the spreading puddle. The woman moved. Her hand shot out and intercepted the clipboard 6 inches from the water. She didn't grab at it. She plucked it cleanly from the air with the kind of hand-eye coordination that required thousands of hours of training. It was the kind of reflex that meant the difference between life and death when a grenade rolled into a foxhole. The corridor fell silent for 3 full seconds. Then Sterling laughed again, though it sounded forced. "Good catch. Maybe you should try out for the softball team." Young Corporal Bennett, part of the maintenance crew, and the only one who had tried to befriend the quiet woman in the 6 months she had worked there, stepped forward. "Admiral, sir, with respect, maybe we should—" "Corporal." Sterling didn't even look at him. "Did someone ask for your input?" "No, sir." "Then keep your mouth shut." Sterling turned back to the woman, who had already retrieved a second mop and was cleaning up the spill with the same methodical efficiency she applied to everything. "You know, I'm curious about something. You've got all-access clearance. That's unusual for maintenance." She reached into her pocket without pausing her work and produced her badge. The magnetic strip glinted under the fluorescent lights. Level 5 clearance. Full base access, including restricted training zones. Choi snatched it from her hand, examining it closely. "How does a cleaner get level 5? "Background check cleared 6 months ago." Her voice remained even. "You can verify with security." From the second-floor medical office, Dr. Sarah Lawson watched the scene unfold with growing unease. She had treated this woman twice. Once for a scraped knuckle, and once for what looked like an old shoulder injury flaring up. Both times the woman had demonstrated an unusually high pain tolerance and an encyclopedic knowledge of field medicine. Lawson had noted it in her personal log, but hadn't thought much of it. Now, watching the predatory circle of senior officers, she felt her instincts screaming that something was very wrong with this picture. Sterling was warming to his game now. He could feel the crowd's attention and the weight of his recent promotion. He had spent 20 years climbing in the SEAL command structure, and now he finally had the respect he felt he deserved. This was his base, his command, his moment. "Tell you what, sweetheart, since you seem to know so much about our weapons, why don't you explain the proper maintenance procedure for that M4 you identified?" "Shouldn't be too hard for someone with all-access clearance, right?" The woman set down her mop. She walked to the armory window and pointed at the rifle without touching it. "Barrel requires cleaning every 200 to 300 rounds, more frequently in desert environments due to sand infiltration. Bolt carrier group should be cleaned and lubricated every 500 rounds minimum. Gas tube requires inspection, but not cleaning unless a malfunction occurs. Buffer spring needs replacement every 5,000 rounds, or as indicated by failure to return to battery. Magazine springs are the most common point of failure and should be rotated regularly." Choi's face had gone from smug to uncertain. That was word for word from the armorer's manual. "Anyone can memorize words," he said, but his voice had lost its edge. "You want a practical demonstration?" She turned to face him directly for the first time. "Sure." Sterling waved at the armory sergeant. "Get that M4 out here. Let's see what the help knows about weapon handling." The armory sergeant, a weathered staff sergeant named Collins, who had been quietly watching the exchange, hesitated. "Sir, regulations require—" "I'm aware of regulations, Sergeant. Get the weapon." Collins retrieved the M4, cleared it with practiced efficiency, and locked the bolt to the rear. He placed it on the counter between them, uncomfortable with the situation, but unable to disobey a direct order from an admiral. The woman approached the weapon. Her hands moved before Miller could even process what he was seeing. Field strip. The rifle came apart in a blur of controlled motion. Upper receiver separated from lower. Bolt carrier group extracted. Firing pin removed. Bolt broken down. Charging handle. Buffer spring. Every component laid out in perfect sequence in 11.7 seconds. Miller knew the time because he had unconsciously checked his watch. 11.7 seconds. The SEAL qualification standard was 15 seconds. The Special Forces standard was 13. Only Tier 1 operators consistently broke 12. She reassembled it in 10.2 seconds. The corridor had gone absolutely silent. Even Sterling had stopped smiling. Lieutenant Commander Stone, a SEAL team instructor who had just arrived for his shift, stopped dead in the corridor entrance. He had seen that disassembly speed exactly once before, in a classified briefing about force recon selection standards. His eyes narrowed as he studied the small woman, who was calmly handing the weapon back to Sergeant Collins. "Lucky," Choi finally said. "Probably. Practice that party trick at home." "Want me to do it blindfolded?" she asked. The question held no arrogance, no challenge. It was a pure, factual inquiry. Before anyone could respond, Colonel Reynolds arrived with his inspection team. 3 Pentagon observers conducting their quarterly facility review. He took one look at the crowd, the disassembled weapon being reassembled, and the woman in the maintenance uniform holding it, and his expression darkened. "What exactly is going on here?" "Just some entertainment, Colonel," Sterling said smoothly. "Maintenance worker here was showing off some skills." Reynolds' eyes swept the scene with the practiced assessment of a career officer. He saw the wet floor, the kicked bucket, and the circle of smirking senior officers around one small woman. His lips thinned. And this seemed like an appropriate use of command time? "With respect, sir, we were simply—" "I didn't ask for your justification, Admiral. I asked what was going on." Reynolds' attention fixed on the woman. "You, name and position." She met his eyes calmly. "Helena Vance. Maintenance crew. 6 months on base." "And you have weapons handling certification because—" "Previous employment, sir." "What previous employment?" "I'd prefer not to say, sir." Mendez stepped forward, smelling blood. "Colonel, I think we should verify her credentials. This is starting to smell like stolen valor. Some people like to play dress-up with skills they don't actually have." Elena's expression didn't change, but Miller saw her shoulders shift, almost imperceptibly, into a more balanced stance. Combat ready. She didn't even know she was doing it. "Fine," Reynolds said. "Someone call security. Let's verify these credentials she's so reluctant to discuss." While they waited, Sharp circled closer, her instinct for social dominance kicking in. "You know what? I think you're one of those groupies who hangs around bases trying to get attention from real operators. Maybe you dated some enlisted guy who taught you a few tricks, and now you think you're special." Petty Officer Lewis, a fresh SEAL graduate who had been watching in uncomfortable silence, noticed something the senior officers had missed. The woman's breathing pattern hadn't changed once during the entire confrontation. Box breathing. 4 count in, 4 count hold, 4 count out, 4 count hold. The stress management technique they had spent weeks learning and training. She was doing it automatically. Security arrived with her full personnel file. The officer in charge, a senior chief named Williams, looked confused as he read it. "Ma'am, your file shows all certifications current. Advanced weapons handling, tactical medical, combat driving, close quarters combat, survival, evasion, resistance, escape. This is an operator's qual sheet, not maintenance." "All legitimate?" Reynolds pressed. "Yes, sir. All verified through proper channels. Background check cleared by Naval. Intelligence. No flags, no issues." "But her employment record only goes back 6 months, Mendez protested. "What was she doing before that?" Williams flipped through the pages. "File doesn't say, Chief. Just shows she was cleared for employment after a standard background investigation." "That's not standard," Sharp said. "You don't get level 5 clearance in this qualification list without a service record." "Where's her service record?" "Not in the file, ma'am." Sterling saw his opportunity to regain control of the situation. "Then I propose a practical test. We've got the combat simulation range available right now. If Miss Vance here is really qualified for all these certifications, she should be able to demonstrate competency. And if she can't, we file a report for falsifying credentials." Stone stepped forward. "Admiral, I'm not sure that's—" "Are you questioning my judgment, Commander?" Stone met his superior's eyes, calculating the risk. Finally, "No, sir." "Good. Miss Vance, you're invited to the range." Consider it a professional development opportunity." Sterling's smile had returned. He had turned this from public humiliation into official business. Clever. "Unless you'd like to admit now that your credentials are questionable." Elena looked at him for a long moment. Then quietly, "Sure." The word hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. The group moved en masse toward the combat training facility. A small army of observers was swept up in the promise of a spectacle. Word spread through the base like wildfire. By the time they reached the range, the observation gallery held more than 50 personnel. SEALs in training, instructors, administrative staff, and even some civilian contractors who had heard something interesting was happening. The range master, a grizzled SEAL, senior chief named Kowalski, met them at the entrance. "Admiral, we need proper safety briefings if you're bringing in an untrained—" "She's got qualifications," Sterling cut him off. "Just set up the standard operator assessment." Kowalski looked at Elena, really looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. He had been doing this job for 15 years. He knew what a faker looked like. This woman standing calmly in maintenance coveralls, while 50 people gathered to watch her fail, wasn't faking anything. "Yes, sir. What level difficulty?" "Let's start simple. Static target shooting. Then we'll escalate if she's actually competent." Sterling gestured magnanimously. "Choose your weapon, Miss Vance." The armory offered the standard training weapons: M4 carbines, M9 pistols, Sig Sauer, P226. Elena walked past all of them to the secure locker at the back. "May I?" Kowalski raised his eyebrows but nodded. She opened it and removed a Barrett M82A1 50 caliber anti-materiel rifle weighing 29 pounds unloaded. Choi actually laughed. "You can't be serious. That thing weighs more than you do." She lifted it with proper carry. Technique, weight distributed perfectly across her frame, and walked to the firing line. The rifle looked absurd in her small hands. Several people in the gallery pulled out phones, anticipating a viral video of someone's humiliation. Miller closed his eyes briefly. He had fired a Barrett exactly once in his career. The recoil had bruised his shoulder for a week. "Target distance?" Elena asked. 800 meters, Sterling said generously. It was an impossible shot with a Barrett for anyone except specialized snipers. He was giving her enough rope to hang herself publicly. She loaded a single round, settled into the prone position, and looked through the scope. Her breathing slowed, steadied. 10 seconds passed. 15. She was reading the wind, calculating the drop, measuring every variable. The shot cracked like thunder. 800 meters downrange, the center of the target exploded. Kowalski checked through the spotting scope. Dead center. Holy cow. Sterling's jaw worked. Again, different distance. Make it 200 meters. 3 more shots. 3 perfect hits. She adjusted for wind, for distance, for the slight elevation difference, and every round found its mark. When she stood, there wasn't a trace of strain on her face. No bruising from recoil, no discomfort, just calm, professional efficiency. Sharp's face had gone pale. "Where did you serve?" she demanded. "What unit?" "I said I'd prefer not to discuss my previous employment." "That's not an option anymore," Reynolds said. His voice had changed, losing its dismissiveness. He was starting to understand. He was watching something significant. "Those shots aren't lucky. That's trained skill, high-level trained skill." Lewis leaned toward Stone. "Sir, her breathing. She's doing box breathing. She hasn't broken the pattern once." Stone nodded slowly. He was putting pieces together, and he didn't like the picture forming. "Admiral, I strongly recommend we stop this demonstration and—" "What, Commander?" "Let her walk away without explaining how a maintenance worker shoots like a scout sniper." Sterling wasn't backing down. His ego was fully engaged now. "Miss Vance, pistol transition drill. Let's see if you're as good with a sidearm." Kowalski set up the drill reluctantly. Mozambique pattern. 2-round center mass, 1-round headshot on multiple targets under time pressure. The SEAL standard was 3 seconds for 3 targets. Elena picked up an M9, checked it with the automatic precision of someone who had done the movement 10,000 times, and stepped to the line. "Ready?" Kowalski called. "Set, go." The shots came so fast they almost blurred together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 3 targets, 3 rounds each. Perfect Mozambique pattern. The timer showed 0.9 seconds. Someone in the gallery whispered, "That's not possible." Dr. Lawson had come down from her office, drawn by the crowd. She stood in the back of the gallery, watching with growing certainty. She had seen those hands before, when treating Elena's injuries. Those were hands with old scars and specific patterns. Rope burns on the palms. Knife defense marks on the forearms. A particular callus formation that came from thousands of hours of weapon handling. Lawson had done a residency at Walter Reed. She knew what combat trauma looked like. She knew what operators' hands looked like. Choi, desperate to regain some ground, moved forward. "All right, shooting drills are one thing. Let's see how you handle CQB, close quarters battle, room clearing." Kowalski set up the kill house. It was a mock-up facility with multiple rooms, doors, corners, every scenario that might be encountered in urban warfare. Targets popped up randomly, some hostile, some civilian. The drill tested decision-making under pressure, tactical movement, and threat assessment. Even experienced SEALs sometimes failed it. Elena walked into the entry point. She paused for just a moment, studying the layout, then nodded. "Ready?" The drill activated. What happened next would be reviewed on camera footage for the next 3 hours by increasingly bewildered tactical instructors. She cleared the facility using techniques that weren't standard military. They were better, more efficient. Movement patterns that minimized exposure while maximizing coverage. She identified and engaged 12 hostile targets while avoiding 8 civilian targets, all in 41 seconds. The current base record was 57 seconds. But it was the technique that made Sergeant First Class Davis, the simulation operator, freeze the footage and replay it 3 times. That's not SEAL CQB. That's not Army. That's not even Delta. Then what is it? Someone asked. Davis shook his head slowly. "I've only seen movement like that once, in a training video from Quantico, Force Recon." The gallery had gone absolutely quiet. Sharp stepped down from the observation area, her face a mask of confusion, anger, and something that might have been fear. "You need to tell us right now who you are. This isn't a game anymore." Before Elena could respond, or not respond, the base PA system crackled to life. "Medical emergency, CQB training area. Medical emergency, CQB training area. All qualified personnel respond." Mendez, watching from the armory, allowed himself a small smile. He had arranged this. A training accident, carefully staged, designed to embarrass Elena one final time. He had convinced a junior SEAL to fake an injury, something that would require immediate trauma response. She would fail, be exposed as a fraud, and he would be vindicated. Everyone rushed to the training area. A young SEAL, Petty Officer Collins, Mendez's co-conspirator, lay on the ground, clutching his chest, simulating a tension pneumothorax. Perfect symptoms: difficulty breathing, uneven chest rise. It was convincing enough that several people looked genuinely alarmed. Elena knelt beside him in one smooth motion. Her hands moved across his chest, checking, assessing. She looked up at Lawson, who had arrived with the emergency medical kit. 14-gauge needle. Lawson's eyes widened. That was the correct treatment for tension pneumothorax, but it was an advanced procedure. "You know how to perform needle decompression?" "Yes." Elena took the needle, located the anatomical landmark, second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line, with her fingers, but then she paused. Her eyes narrowed. She pressed her fingers more firmly against Colin's chest, checked his breathing again, looked at his eyes, at the slight nervousness there. "Stand up," she said quietly. I can't. I need." "Stand up." Her voice carried a sudden command authority that made Collins obey before his brain caught up. He stood, breathing perfectly fine. "Bad acting," Elena said to the room at large. "Real pneumothorax, presents with tracheal deviation. His trachea is midline. Real patients don't grab their chest symmetrically. They favor the affected side. His pupils should be dilated from pain and hypoxia. They're normal." She stood, handed the needle back to Lawson, and turned to Mendez. "Did you set this up?" The chief's face had gone red. "I don't know what you're—" "You wanted me to perform an invasive procedure on a healthy person, so you could charge me with assault." Her voice remained calm, but there was something underneath it now. Something cold. "Clever. Almost worked." Lawson stepped forward. "Chief Mendez, if this young man isn't actually injured, we need to have a serious conversation about the waste of medical resources, and—" The base commander's voice cut through on someone's radio. "All personnel be advised. We have incoming VIP. General Harrison, Commanding General, 2nd Marine Division, arriving for surprise inspection. All section heads report to the main briefing room in 15 minutes. All section heads, main briefing room, 15 minutes." The crowd began to disperse, the drama interrupted by the sudden need to prepare for a general's inspection. But Sterling wasn't done. "Miss Vance, this conversation isn't over. You'll report to my office at 1500 hours to provide a full accounting of your background and qualifications." She met his eyes. "With respect, Admiral, I don't report to you. I'm a civilian contractor, not active duty." "Then consider it a request. One you'd be wise to honor if you want to keep your job." She nodded once. 1500 hours. Your office." As the crowd dispersed, Miller approached her cautiously. "Ma'am, I don't know who you are, but you might want to have a JAG representative present for that meeting." She looked at him, really looked at him, and for just a moment her expression softened. "Thank you, Sergeant. I appreciate the advice. Can I ask you something off the record?" "You can ask." "That tattoo on your shoulder. I saw it when your collar shifted. That's not a random design, is it?" Her face went carefully blank. "I need to get back to work." She walked away, leaving Miller standing in the corridor more certain than ever that he had just witnessed something significant. Something that was about to explode in ways none of them could predict. In his office, Mendez was already making calls, trying to verify Elena's background through unofficial channels. He had friends in various units, people who owed him favors. If this woman was a fake, he would expose her. And if she wasn't, that possibility was starting to seem more likely, and it terrified him more than he wanted to admit. Sharp sat in her office, staring at the footage of Elena clearing the kill house. She replayed the movement patterns over and over, the efficiency, the precision. This wasn't someone who dated an operator and learned a few tricks. This was someone who had done this for real, in situations where mistakes meant death. Sharp had spent her entire career fighting to be taken seriously as a female operator. She had endured hell to earn her trident, and now here was this quiet maintenance worker who moved like... She couldn't finish the thought. Choi sat in the armory, methodically cleaning his personal weapon, trying to process what he'd seen. That disassembly speed. He had been teaching weapons handling for 8 years. He knew the best of the best. That woman had just performed at a level he had only seen in a handful of operators. People with names that showed up in classified briefings, not on maintenance rosters. At exactly 1500 hours, Elena Vance walked into Admiral Sterling's office. She had changed into clean, maintenance coveralls, her hair still in its simple ponytail. She looked small, unremarkable, and completely out of place in the richly appointed command office. Sterling sat behind his desk, flanked by Sharp and Reynolds. Choi stood near the door, arms crossed. Mendez lurked in the corner, a predator waiting for his moment. "Sit," Sterling ordered. She remained standing. "I prefer to stand, sir." "That wasn't a request." "With respect, Admiral, I'm not active-duty military. You can't give me orders." His jaw tightened. This wasn't how he had expected this meeting to go. "Fine, stand. But you will explain your background, your qualifications, and why you're working in maintenance when you clearly have specialized training." "I'd prefer not to discuss my previous employment, and I'd prefer not to have a mystery operative working on my base without full disclosure." He leaned forward. "Here's what I think. I think you washed out of whatever program you were in. Maybe couldn't handle the pressure, maybe failed the psych eval, and now you're clinging to whatever skills you managed to retain, trying to feel important by impressing people." Something flickered across Elena's face, just for an instant. Then it was gone. "Or maybe," Sharp added, her voice sharp with resentment, "you were never actually in any program. Maybe you're a very good actress who learned how to fake competence. We've seen it before. People who study operators learn the lingo, practice the moves, and try to pass themselves off as something they're not." "Stolen valor," Mendez said from his corner. "It's a crime. We could have you arrested." Elena's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. A message from someone labeled only as Dad. 3 words. "Proud of you." She allowed herself the smallest smile before returning her attention to the officers arrayed against her. "Call security," Reynolds suggested. "Let's get this sorted out officially. Full background investigation, polygraph if necessary." Choi pushed off from the wall. "I'll make the call." As he reached for the phone, Chief Warrant Officer Kim burst through the door, slightly out of breath. "Sir, sorry to interrupt, but I have those search results you requested." "This better be good, Kim," Sterling growled. "You asked me to run a deep background check on Elena Vance." Kim held up a tablet, his face pale. "Sir, I found something, multiple somethings, but there's a problem." "What problem?" "The file is classified, like seriously classified. I only got access because General Harrison authorized it when he heard what was going on. Sir, I need O6 clearance minimum to even open the full record." The room went very, very quiet. Reynolds stood. "I have O6 clearance. Let me see that tablet." Kim handed it over reluctantly. Reynolds' eyes scanned the screen. His face went through a remarkable series of expressions: confusion, shock, disbelief, and finally something that looked like horror. His hand holding the tablet began to shake. "This can't be right," he whispered. "What?" Sterling demanded. "What does it say?" Reynolds looked up at Elena, seeing her completely differently now. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "I served with your father in Fallujah, 2nd Battle, November 2004. Master Sergeant Richard Vance. He never told me." He couldn't finish the sentence. "Told you what?" Sharp stepped forward, trying to see the screen. Reynolds turned the tablet so they all could see. The classification header was bright red. Top Secret, SCI. Below it, a personnel file. And at the top, in bold letters, Vance, Elena, Captain, USMC, Force Recon. The room seemed to tilt. "No," Sterling said flatly. "That's not possible. Force Recon doesn't take—" He caught himself, but the damage was done. "Doesn't take women?" Elena asked quietly. "They do now. Have been for years. You'd know that if you kept up with core developments outside the SEAL community." "Force Recon is one thing," Mendez said, his voice desperate now. "That doesn't explain the skill level we saw. That was—" "Keep reading," Reynolds said. His face had gone gray. Kim pulled up the next section. Mission history. 73 successful operations. Deployment dates spanning 12 years. Locations that were still classified. A list of commendations that scrolled on for pages. Navy Cross, 4. Bronze Star, 6. Purple Heart, 7, along with dozens of other medals and citations. And then at the bottom, in stark text, status, KIA, presumed, Helmand Province, August 2019. She's dead, Choi said stupidly. The file says she's dead. Presumed KIA, Elena corrected. Means they didn't find a body. Means I was alone behind enemy lines for 47 days before I made it to friendly forces. Means the Corps declared me dead, because statistically, nobody survives that long in that terrain under those conditions. Sharp had backed up against the wall, her face ashen. Your Reynolds finished. Call sign. He looked at her. The file won't load your call sign. That part's redacted. It would be, she said. Call signs for certain operations stay classified. Sterling had gone very still. His earlier swagger had evaporated. Ghost unit, he whispered. Your ghost unit. I don't know what you're talking about, Admiral. Don't. His voice was hollow. I've seen the briefings. There are only 23 ghost unit operators in the entire history of Marine Force Recon. He looked like he might be sick. Mendez had slumped against the wall. He had physically assaulted a superior officer. Not just any officer, a ghost unit operator. His career wasn't just over. He was looking at a potential court-martial. Kim pulled up another section. Sirs, there's more. The reason she's here working maintenance, he read aloud. Status change. Voluntary retirement. Compassionate leave granted. Father, Master Sergeant Richard Vance, USMC, Ritaminier, suffered traumatic brain injuries, February 2020. Subject requested discharge to provide full-time care. Request granted with honors. Current residence, San Diego. Current employment. Civilian contractor, Naval Base. Coronado Maintenance Division. Cleared for level access, due to previous service and ongoing security clearance. The pieces clicked into place. She wasn't here hiding. She was here because her father needed her. The man who had raised her, who had served 25 years in the Corps, who had been wounded in Fallujah, Reynolds Fallujah, was dying, and she had given up everything to take care of him. How long? Reynolds asked quietly. How long does he have? Elena's mask cracked just slightly. Doctors say 6 months, maybe less. And you've been here 6 months? Yes, sir. The silence stretched. Sharp had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Choi had turned away, unable to meet Elena's eyes. Mendez looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Sterling stood slowly. Every ounce of his earlier arrogance had burned away. Captain Vance, He couldn't find the words. It's fine, Admiral. It's not fine. Nothing about this is fine. I mocked you. I called you. He couldn't even repeat the words. You didn't know. That's not an excuse, he straightened. I owe you an apology, a real one, in front of the same people who witnessed my behavior. That's not necessary. Yes, it is, Reynolds cut in. Captain, with respect, it absolutely is necessary. What happened today? He shook his head. We need to make this right. A knock at the door interrupted them. A junior officer stuck his head in. Sorry to interrupt, sirs, but General Harrison requests Admiral Sterling, Colonel Reynolds, and... He checked his notes. Captain Vance report to the commanding officer's briefing room immediately. Elena's expression shifted to something like resignation. He read the file. Yes, ma'am, and he's requested your presence specifically. They walked through the corridors of the base. A strange procession. Word had spread. The mysterious maintenance worker was Force Recon, was Ghost Unit, was decorated beyond belief. Personnel stopped and stared. Some stood at attention as she passed. Others pulled out phones. By the time they reached the briefing room, a crowd had gathered outside. Miller was there, along with Lewis, Stone, Dr. Lawson, and dozens of others who had witnessed the confrontation or heard about it secondhand. General Harrison stood at the head of the briefing table. He was a tall man in his late 50s, with the weathered face of someone who had spent decades in combat zones. When Elena entered, he came to attention immediately and rendered a full, formal salute. Hand crisp, bearing perfect, held until she returned it. The weight of that gesture hit everyone in the room like a physical blow. A two-star general had just saluted first. That only happened for one reason: respect that transcended rank. "Captain Vance," Harrison's voice was formal but warm. "It's an honor to finally meet you in person. Your reputation precedes you, though I wish the circumstances of this meeting were different." "Sir?" She stood at attention, every inch the Marine officer, despite the maintenance coveralls. Harrison turned to Sterling. "Admiral, I've reviewed the incident reports from today. Multiple witnesses, video footage, and several very concerned personnel who felt something was deeply wrong about how events unfolded. Would you care to explain?" Sterling's face had gone pale. "Sir, I had no knowledge of Captain Vance's background or service record. The way she presented," Harrison interrupted, his voice going cold, "was as a civilian employee doing her job. A job she took to be near her dying father, a father who served this country for 25 years and earned his retirement through blood and sacrifice. And you decided the appropriate conduct was to publicly mock her, question her credentials, and force her into demonstrating capabilities she clearly wished to keep private." "Sir, I'm not finished, Admiral." Harrison's command presence filled the room. "Do you know why Captain Vance's call sign is classified? Do you know why ghost unit designations are kept in sealed files?" Sterling shook his head mutely. "Because operators at that level makes enemies, real enemies, nation-state level threats, terrorist organizations that would pay millions for their identities. Captain Vance's face, her real name, her location, all of that was protected information. And today, you forced her to expose her capabilities in front of 50-plus personnel, many of whom recorded it on their personal devices. The implications crashed down. Elena's safety had just been compromised. Her father's safety, all because of ego and entertainment." "Sir," Elena spoke up, "with respect, the operational security concerns can be managed. I knew the risks when I chose to work here. Today's events were unfortunate, but not catastrophic." "That's generous of you, Captain." Harrison studied her. "Too generous. But it raises the question, why here? Why this base? You could have taken a position anywhere. Gotten a consulting job paying 6 figures? Instead, you're mopping floors for minimum wage." "Proximity to Balboa Naval Medical Center," she said simply. "Best traumatic brain injury specialist in the region. My father gets treatment there twice a week. This base is 12 minutes from the hospital and 15 minutes from our apartment." The math was simple. Reynolds spoke up, his voice rough with emotion. "Sir, if I may, I served with Master Sergeant Vance in Fallujah. He was my platoon sergeant. Saved my life twice in that city. I had no idea his daughter was—" He gestured helplessly. "I should have known. Should have recognized—" "Nobody was supposed to recognize her, Colonel. That was the point." Harrison pulled out a chair. "Captain, please sit. The rest of you as well. We need to discuss how we move forward from here." They sat around the briefing table, an admiral, a colonel, a two-star general, and a woman in maintenance coveralls, who outranked most of them in every way that mattered. Harrison pulled up a file on the briefing room screen. "I received a call approximately 30 minutes ago from JSOC. They're aware of today's incident. They're also aware that Captain Vance's cover, such as it was, has been compromised. They're offering several options." "Sir, I don't want to return to active duty," Elena said immediately. "My father—" "I know, Captain. They know. These options account for that." He clicked through the presentation. "Option 1, full identity protection protocol. New name, new location, new job. Your father would be relocated to a facility near whichever base you choose. All medical care covered." "That would disrupt his treatment schedule," Elena said. "His doctors at Balboa know his case intimately. Starting over with new providers could cost him months he doesn't have." "Understood." Option 2, enhanced security at current location, armed protective detail, surveillance countermeasures, active threat monitoring. You continue current employment, but with a security footprint. That would defeat the entire purpose of trying to live normally. My father is already struggling with memory and cognition, Adding security teams and protocols would confuse and upset him. Harrison nodded. Option 3, and this is the one I'm personally recommending. You accept a position as a training instructor here at Coronado. Official title, official rank recognition, appropriate pay grade. You'd work with SEAL candidates and Force Recon students, teaching advanced combat techniques. Hours would be flexible, allowing you to maintain your father's care schedule, and your presence would be explained, normalized, making you less of a target. Elena considered this. Teaching would expose me to hundreds of students. Any one of them could compromise operational security. True. But they'd be vetted personnel with security clearances. And frankly, Captain, your operational security is already compromised. The question is how we manage that reality, not whether we can maintain a fiction that's already been shattered. Sharp spoke up, her voice subdued. Sir, if Captain Vance does accept an instructor role, I'd like to request assignment as her liaison officer. I owe her. I need to make amends for today. Noted, Commander. Captain Vance would have final say on that assignment. Harrison looked at Elena. You don't have to decide now. Take 24 hours. Talk to your father if his condition allows, but JSOC needs an answer by 1600 hours tomorrow. I understand, sir. Good. Now, regarding today's other participants. His gaze swept the room. Admiral Sterling, you'll be issuing a formal apology at tomorrow morning's base-wide formation. You'll explain that you were unaware of Captain Vance's background, and that your conduct fell below the standards expected of officers. You'll also be enrolling in a mandatory course on respectful leadership. Questions? No, sir. Commander Sharp, same apology, same formation. Additionally, you'll be writing a personal letter to Captain Vance, detailing exactly how your behavior contradicted the values you claim to represent. That letter will be reviewed by your commanding officer and placed in your personnel file. Sharp swallowed hard. Yes, sir. Colonel Reynolds, you're assigned as Captain Vance's primary point of contact for any needs related to her father's care or her own security concerns. You served with Sergeant Vance. You know what he sacrificed. Make sure his daughter has everything she needs. Sir, it would be my honor. Chief Mendez. Harrison's voice went cold. You staged a fake medical emergency designed to embarrass and potentially implicate Captain Vance in an assault. You physically grabbed a superior officer. You've been conducting unauthorized background investigations. You're confined to quarters pending formal court-martial proceedings. Security will escort you from this briefing. Mendez's face had gone gray. 2 security personnel entered and flanked him. As they led him away, he looked back at Elena. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't know. I didn't. You didn't care, she said quietly. That was the problem. The door closed behind him. The briefing room felt larger, emptier. Choi raised his hand tentatively. Sir? What about me? I participated in the mocking, the challenges. Yes, you did, Lieutenant. You also recognized skill when you saw it, even if you didn't want to admit it. You'll be assisting Captain Vance with weapons training classes, should she accept the instructor position. Consider it an opportunity to learn from someone who's actually used these skills in combat, not just on a range. Yes, sir. Harrison stood. The rest of you, Miller, Lewis, Stone, Dr. Lawson, you're here because you either tried to defend Captain Vance or recognized something was wrong. That's noted and appreciated. Dismissed. They filed out, leaving Elena alone with Harrison. He waited until the door closed, then his formal bearing relaxed slightly. Off the record, Captain. How are you really doing? She took a breath. Honestly, sir, I'm tired. My father has good days and bad days. On good days, he remembers me. On bad days, he thinks I'm my mother, who died when I was 12. The doctors say the injury is progressing. Every week he loses a little more. I'm sorry. He was always proud of my service. Showed everyone my commendations, even though he wasn't supposed to talk about them. Now he can't remember most of it. Sometimes he asks when I'm deploying, and I have to remind him I retired. It breaks his heart every time, like hearing it for the first time. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes were bright. So no, sir. I don't want to go back to active duty. I don't want security details or relocated identities. I just want the time I have left with him to be as normal as possible. Then we'll make that happen. Harrison's voice was gentle. And Captain, what you're doing now, taking care of your father, that's as important as any mission you ever ran. Don't let anyone tell you different. Thank you, sir. One more thing. Your call sign. The file won't load it for me, but I heard Sterling mention Ghost Unit, and he looked terrified. I've been in this business 35 years, and there are still operations I don't have clearance for. I'm guessing your call sign is connected to some of those. She met his eyes. I'd prefer not to discuss it, sir. Fair enough. But if you ever want to talk about anything, my door's open. We take care of our own, even the ones who don't ask for help. She stood and saluted. He returned it crisply. As she turned to leave, he called out, Captain, for what it's worth, Force Recon made the right choice when they selected you. And the Corps lost a damn fine officer when you retired. The Corps didn't lose me, sir. I'm still a Marine, just in a different way. Outside the briefing room, a small crowd had gathered. Miller, Lewis, Stone, Lawson, and dozens of others. They snapped to attention as she emerged. Some saluted. Others just watched with expressions of awe, respect, and in a few cases, shame. Young Corporal Bennett pushed forward. Ma'am, I wanted to say I'm sorry. I should have defended you more strongly when you stood up when it mattered, Corporal. That takes courage. Don't apologize for doing the right thing. Lewis approached next. Captain, I'm a new SEAL graduate still learning. But watching you today, the way you handled everything, that taught me more about professionalism than 6 months of training. Thank you. She nodded. Being a good operator isn't about how many push-ups you can do, petty officer. It's about keeping your head when everyone around you is losing theirs. Remember that. Dr. Lawson stepped forward. I reviewed your medical files. With General Harrison's permission, obviously. The injuries you sustained during that 47-day evasion in Helmand. She shook her head. The fact that you're walking, functioning, working. It's remarkable. If you ever need anything medically or otherwise, please don't hesitate. I appreciate that, Doctor. Stone pulled her aside as the crowd began to disperse. Captain, I need to tell you something. About 3 weeks ago, I saw you in the maintenance break room. You were on the phone, speaking what I'm pretty sure was Pashto. I almost reported it as suspicious. Now I realize you probably speak 6 languages, and that was just normal for you. Elena allowed herself a small smile. 8 languages, actually. And yes, I was talking to an old Afghan translator who helped my unit during several operations. He made it to the States with his family, lives in Richmond now. I check in on him occasionally. See, that's what I mean. You're this incredible combination of lethal operator and genuinely good person. He struggled for words. It's humbling. The next morning, at 800 hours, the entire base formation assembled on the parade ground. Over 800 personnel in dress uniforms, standing in perfect ranks under the early San Diego sun. At the front, Admiral Sterling stood at a podium, his face carefully composed, but his discomfort evident. Elena stood off to the side, now wearing proper utilities. Marine Corps camouflage with captain's bars, her uniform crisp, despite having been in storage for over a year. She had debated wearing it, but Harrison had insisted. Respect earned, deserved recognition. Sterling cleared his throat. Yesterday I made a serious error in judgment. I publicly mocked and challenged a civilian employee of this base, making assumptions about her character and capabilities based on her position and appearance. I subjected her to unnecessary tests designed to humiliate. I created a hostile work environment and violated every principle of leadership I claim to uphold. His voice was steady, but the words clearly cost him. What I didn't know, what I should have taken the time to learn, was that this woman is Captain Elena Vance, United States Marine Corps, retired. Force Recon operator, With 12 years of distinguished service, 73 successful missions, and more combat decorations than most of us will ever see. She took a maintenance position at this base for one reason: to be near her father, a retired Marine who requires specialized medical care. The formation had gone absolutely silent. You could hear the wind moving across the parade ground. Captain Vance had no obligation to prove herself to me or anyone else. Her service record speaks for itself, yet she endured my mockery with grace and professionalism, demonstrating more leadership in her silence than I showed with all my words. Sterling looked directly at Elena. "Captain, I offer you my sincere and unreserved apology. My behavior was inexcusable. I failed to live up to the standards expected of officers and gentlemen. I failed to honor the values of respect and dignity that should guide all military service. I am deeply sorry." He stepped back from the podium. Sharp stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "Captain Vance?" Her voice carried across the parade ground. "I spent years fighting to be recognized as a capable operator in a male-dominated field. I endured harassment, discrimination, and constant questioning of my abilities. And yesterday, the moment I achieved some authority, I turned around and inflicted that same treatment on another woman." Her voice cracked slightly. "I made assumptions based on your appearance and position. I questioned your legitimacy. I was cruel. I did to you exactly what was done to me, and I have no excuse for that hypocrisy. You handled 12 years of combat operations that I can't even imagine, and I treated you like you were nothing. I'm ashamed of myself. I'm sorry," she saluted. Elena returned it crisply. Sharp held the salute for a long moment before dropping her hand. General Harrison took the podium. "This base will learn from yesterday's events. We will implement new protocols for how we treat all personnel, regardless of rank or position. We will remember that every person here, maintenance, administration, security, combat forces, plays a vital role in our mission. And we will never again make the mistake of judging someone's worth by their appearance or job title." He gestured for Elena to join him at the podium. She walked forward, and 800 people came to attention simultaneously. The sound of all those boots hitting the ground together echoed like thunder. "Captain Vance has agreed to accept a position as a training instructor at this facility. She'll be working with our most advanced candidates, teaching the kind of real-world skills that can only come from actual combat experience. Those of you selected for her courses should consider it the highest honor and the toughest training you'll ever receive." Applause started somewhere in the ranks and spread like wildfire. Within seconds, the entire formation was clapping, then cheering. Some of the senior NCOs, men who had been deployed a dozen times, seen the worst combat had to offer, had tears on their faces. Elena stood at the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces, and for the first time in a long time, she felt something other than grief and exhaustion. She felt pride, not in her combat record or her decorations, but in this moment, in the possibility of passing her knowledge to the next generation. "Thank you," she said simply. "I look forward to working with you." 3 weeks later, Elena stood in the Advanced Tactics Training Facility, facing 20 of the base's top SEAL candidates. They watched her with a mixture of awe and nervousness. She was a legend, ghost unit, the woman who had survived 47 days alone in hostile territory, the warrior who had given it all up for family. "Forget everything impressive you've heard about me," she told them. "It doesn't matter. What matters is what you learn in this room. I'm not here to tell you war stories or show off. I'm here to teach you how to survive when everything goes wrong. Because it will go wrong. Plans fail, equipment breaks, people die. And when that happens, the only thing standing between you and a body bag is your training." She moved to the center of the mat. "Real combat isn't like the movies. It's not clean or heroic. It's chaos and fear and making the best decision you can with incomplete information, in 3 seconds or less. Most of you will never face the situations I'm going to describe. And if you're lucky, you never will. But if you do, I want you to walk away. I want you to go home to your families. That's why I'm here." Lewis raised his hand. "Ma'am, how did you survive 47 days alone in Helmand Province?" She considered the question. I'll tell you, but not as a story of triumph. As a lesson in preparation meeting opportunity. She pulled up a map on the screen. Operation Crimson Eagle, August 15th, 2019. My team inserted into this valley to capture a high-value target. Intel was bad. We walked into an ambush. 3 KNEA immediately. 2 wounded. I was the only one mobile. Her voice remained steady, professional, but there was weight to every word. I had 2 choices. Try to fight through and retrieve the bodies, which would have resulted in my death with 95% certainty, or evade, survive, and ensure someone made it home to tell their families what happened. I chose survival. She clicked through images of terrain. I spent the first week, moving only at night, covering maybe 3 kilometers per night. I ate grubs, insects, whatever I could find. Lost 30 pounds in 4 weeks. Had 3 close calls with Taliban patrols. Avoided them because I'd studied their movement patterns during previous operations. Knowledge saved my life. The room was absolutely silent. Week 3, I developed a serious infection from a shrapnel wound. No antibiotics, no medical supplies. I packed it with honey from a wild hive and cloth from my uniform. Old field medicine trick. It worked. Week 5, I found a dried-up riverbed that led toward friendly territory. Followed it for 18 days. On day 47, I stumbled into a forward operating base manned by Army Rangers who thought I was a ghost. She looked at Lewis. I survived because of 3 things. 1. I never stopped thinking. Panic kills. 2. I used every skill I'd ever learned, no matter how small or insignificant it seemed. Knowing which insects are edible, how to treat infection with natural antibiotics, how to read terrain and weather. All of that mattered. 3. I had a reason to survive. My father, my team's families. Someone needed to come home and tell the story. She clicked off the screen. That's the lesson. Skills matter, knowledge matters, but having a reason to fight matters most. Find your reason before you deploy. Hold on to it when everything goes dark. Let it pull you home. The weeks turned into months. Elena settled into her new role, teaching advanced combat techniques, survival skills, and tactical decision-making. Her students were the best of the best, and she pushed them harder than any instructor they had ever encountered. Sharp, true to her word, served as Elena's liaison officer. The relationship was awkward at first, weighted with guilt and resentment, but gradually evolved into something like mutual respect. Sharp learned humility. Elena learned to accept help. Choi became her assistant instructor, and to his surprise, he learned more in 3 months, working with her, than in 8 years, teaching on his own. She had insights born of real combat experience, the kind of knowledge you couldn't get from manuals or simulations. Miller visited often, sharing stories about operations he had been part of, comparing notes with someone who had been there, done that, at the highest possible level. He told her about the night in Fallujah when a force recon operator code-named Shadow Wolf had pulled his team out of an impossible situation. She listened, but never confirmed or denied. Mendez faced court-martial and received a dishonorable discharge. The verdict was read in the same briefing room where Elena's identity had been revealed. She attended not out of vindictiveness, but because she wanted him to see that actions had consequences. He apologized again. She accepted it, then watched him escorted out in civilian clothes. His career over, Reynolds became a constant presence, checking in weekly about her father's care, ensuring every medical need was met. He brought photos from Fallujah, from the deployment where he had served with Master Sergeant Vance. Elena's father, on his good days, would look at the photos and remember. On those days, his face would light up with the joy of recollection, and Elena would sit beside him for hours, listening to stories she had heard 100 times but never tired of hearing. Dr. Lawson coordinated with Balboa Naval Medical Center to provide the absolute best care available. She personally reviewed every treatment plan, every medication adjustment, every therapy session. Elena tried to thank her. Lawson waved it off. Your father served 25 years. This is the least we can do. Louis became one of Elena's most dedicated students. He absorbed every lesson, asked intelligent questions, and showed the kind of dedication that reminded her why she had agreed to teach in the first place. When he graduated advanced training and received his assignment to a SEAL team, he asked her to pin on his new insignia. She did, feeling a surge of pride that surprised her with its intensity. 5 months after the confrontation in the corridor, Elena was leaving the training facility late in the evening when her encrypted phone vibrated. She pulled it out, saw the number, and felt her stomach tighten. Unknown operator. Priority Alpha. She stepped into an empty office and answered. This is Vance. The voice was distorted, digitally altered. Shadow Wolf, this is Phantom Actual. We know you're retired. We know you made promises to your family, but we have a situation requiring Ghost Unit expertise. I'm not available for operations. 3 operators MIA, hostile territory, 72-hour window. You're the closest asset with the required skill set. A pause. We're not ordering, we're asking. Elena closed her eyes. What's the situation? Intel suggests they're held in a compound you infiltrated during Operation Cerberus. 2017. You know that terrain. You know their tactics. Without you, extraction probability is 19%. With you, another pause. 68%. She thought of her father. His good days were becoming less frequent. The doctors had revised their estimate down to 3 months. Maybe 4. Every moment with him was precious. But 3 operators. Someone's sons, daughters, spouses. People who had served, sacrificed. Who deserved to come home. How long do I have to decide? Wheels up in 4 hours. Volunteer only. Your choice, Captain. She disconnected the call and stood in the darkening office for a long moment. Through the window, she could see the base's lights coming on, illuminating the parade ground where she had received her public apology, the training facilities where she taught the next generation, the corridor where this had all begun. Her phone buzzed again, a text from her father's care facility. Your father is asking for you. He's having a good evening, remembers everything. She looked at both messages, the call to war and the call to family. The impossible choice between duty and love. The decision that had no right answer, only the answer she could live with. Elena pulled up her father's contact and sent him a text. Dad, I'm on my way. Want to hear about your deployment stories tonight? His response came almost immediately. Yes. And you can tell me about yours. My memory is sharp today. I remember everything you did, everything you became. I am so proud, little one. Her eyes burned. She typed out another message, this one to Phantom Actual. Negative on the operation. But I can provide tactical briefing on the compound, updated intelligence from my 17 operation, and recommend 2 operators from my current student roster who can execute the mission profile. Available for consult immediately. The response came 30 seconds later. Understood. Briefing room coordinates sent. Thank you, Shadow Wolf. Your information will save lives. She locked her phone and walked out of the office, down the corridor, the same corridor where this had begun, where she had been mocked and challenged and forced to reveal herself, but now she walked it as herself. Captain Elena Vance, Force Recon, Ghost Unit, Instructor, daughter. No longer hiding, no longer needing to. Miller was waiting near the exit, as if he had known she would be working late. Everything all right, Captain? Yes, Sergeant. Everything's fine. I'm headed to Balboa to see my father. Ah, good. Those moments are important. More important than anything else. She paused. Sergeant, can I ask you something? That night in Fallujah, when Shadow Wolf pulled your team out, what did you learn from it? He thought for a moment. that the best operators aren't the loudest ones. The ones who save lives, who make the difference. They're usually the quiet ones. The ones nobody sees coming. He smiled. Took me years to understand that. But I understand it now. Thank you, Sergeant. She drove to Balboa Naval Medical Center, took the elevator to the 4th floor, and walked down the familiar hallway to her father's room. He was sitting up in bed, looking out the window at the evening sky. When she entered, his face lit up with full recognition. There's my girl, my warrior daughter. She sat beside him, took his hand. Hi, Dad. I had a clear day today, remembered everything. Your mother, your childhood, your service, everything. His eyes were bright, sharp in a way they hadn't been for weeks. The nurses told me you've been teaching at Coronado, that they know who you are now. Yes, it's been good, different, but good. You gave up so much to take care of me. Elena, no, let me say this, while I remember, while I can. He squeezed her hand. You were the best of us. Better than me. Better than any Marine I ever served with. And you walked away from all of it to be here, to be with me. Family first. You taught me that. I also taught you about duty, he continued, about service, about the weight of capability. He looked at her intently. There will be times when they call, when they need what only you can provide. And I want you to know, if you need to answer that call, I understand. Your mother would understand. We raised you to be a warrior. Don't stop being one just because you're afraid of losing me. I'm not afraid of losing you, Dad. I'm afraid of not being here when... I know, but Elena, listen to me. Real warriors know when to fight and when to hold position. You're exactly where you need to be. Teaching, passing on knowledge, being with family. That's not retreat. That's victory. They sat together as the sun set, talking about Fallujah and Helmand, about her mother and his service, about the choices they had made and the prices they had paid. He told her stories from his deployment, filling in details he had never shared before. She told him about operations she had never discussed, things that were probably still classified, but that she needed him to know. I want you to remember something, he said, as the evening wore on. Real warriors don't advertise. They don't need parades or recognition. They do the job because it needs doing, and then they go home to the people they love. You've done the job, little one. You've earned your peace. Don't let anyone take that from you. I won't, Dad. Promise me. When I'm gone, and it won't be long now, we both know that. Promise me you'll live. Not just survive. Live, laugh, love, find joy. You've earned that. I promise. He smiled, satisfied, and settled back into his pillows. Within minutes he was asleep, his breathing steady and peaceful. Elena sat with him through the night, holding his hand, watching his chest rise and fall, memorizing every detail of his face. 2 weeks later, Master Sergeant Richard Vance, USMC, Rhett, passed away peacefully in his sleep, with his daughter beside him. The funeral was held at Fort Rosecrans National Cemetery, with full military honors. General Harrison delivered the eulogy. Hundreds of Marines attended. People who had served with him, people he had trained, people whose lives he had touched. Elena stood at graveside in her dress blues, the uniform she hadn't worn since retirement, accepting the folded flag with steady hands. She didn't cry, not during the service. Marines didn't cry in public, but afterwards, standing alone at the grave as the sun set over the white headstones overlooking the Pacific, she let the tears come. Not tears of regret or anger, tears of gratitude for the time they had had, for the lessons he had taught, for the man he had been. Miller found her there an hour later. He didn't say anything, just stood beside her in silent support. Eventually others joined: Lewis, Stone, Lawson, even Sharp and Choi. A small honor guard of people who had learned what she had sacrificed, what she had given up, and wanted her to know she wasn't alone. He was proud of you, Miller finally said. Anyone could see that. I hope so. I know so. I visited him once about a month ago. He talked about you for 2 hours straight, about how you were the best Marine he'd ever known, how you embodied everything the Corps was supposed to be. She managed a small smile. Thank you for telling me that. They stood together as darkness fell, and eventually, one by one, they left, until only Elena remained. She placed her hand on the headstone, cold marble, under her palm. Semper Fi, Dad. Until we meet again. She turned and walked away, leaving behind the warrior's grave, but carrying forward the warrior's spirit. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Phantom Actual. Another request for consultation. Another chance to serve in the way she once had. This time, she considered it differently. Not as a betrayal of her promise to her father, but as a fulfillment of it. He had told her to live. Living meant using her capabilities, sharing her knowledge, making a difference in whatever way she could. She typed a response. Available for tactical consultation. Remote only. Will provide detailed briefing on request. The answer came immediately. Understood. Thank you, Shadow Wolf. Your insight has saved 12 operators in the last 4 months. We're grateful. 12 lives. 12 people who went home to their families because she had shared what she knew. That was worth something. That mattered. Elena drove back to her apartment. It was larger now, no longer needing to be 15 minutes from the hospital. She had been offered housing on base, but she had declined. She needed space to breathe, to grieve, to figure out who she was now that her father was gone and her identity was known. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. She made tea, sat on the balcony overlooking San Diego Bay, and watched the lights of the base in the distance. Tomorrow she would go back to teaching. She would continue shaping the next generation of operators. She would provide consultation to JSOC when they needed her expertise, but tonight she just sat and remembered deployments and firefights, remembered coming home to her father's smile, remembered the moment in that corridor when everything changed, when Admiral Sterling asked her call sign and set in motion events that would reshape her life. Her encrypted phone buzzed one more time, not Phantom Actual, a different number, one she hadn't seen in 4 years. The message was brief. Shadow Wolf. Operation Broken Arrow requires Ghost Unit activation. 3 operators confirmed KA. Mission parameters require your specific skill set. This is not a consultation request. This is recall to active duty under Executive Order 732 Alpha. Report to Andrews Air Force Base, 0600 hours, date +2. Failure to report will be considered desertion under UCMJ Article 85. Acknowledge receipt. Elena stared at the message for a full minute. Executive Order 732 Alpha. She knew what that meant. Compulsory reactivation for personnel with critical skill sets during national security emergencies. It had only been invoked 11 times in military history. This was number 12. She could fight it, get lawyers involved, argue that her retirement was permanent, that she had fulfilled her obligation. But 3 operators were dead, and the mission parameters required Ghost Unit skills. That meant something had gone catastrophically wrong, something that threatened national security at the highest level. She thought about her father's words. Real warriors know when to fight and when to hold position. She thought about the promise she had made to live, to find peace. But she also thought about the 12 operators whose lives she had saved through consultation. The students she had trained, the knowledge she possessed that could make the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Her fingers hovered over the phone. She could acknowledge, she could report, she could be Shadow Wolf one more time, or she could refuse, face court-martial, stand on principle, choose the life she had built over the life she had left behind. The phone buzzed again. Another message, this one from General Harrison. Captain Vance, I've been briefed on the recall order. I want you to know you have options. JAG stands ready to fight this if you want. Your service has been extraordinary. You've earned your retirement. Whatever you decide, the Corps stands with you. A third message from Lewis. Ma'am, I don't know what's happening, but the base is on alert. Whatever you need, I'm here. A fourth from Miller. Shadow Wolf rumors are flying. If they're calling you back, it's bad, real bad, but you don't owe them anything more. You've given enough. She set the phone down and walked to her closet. In the back, behind civilian clothes and teaching uniforms, was a sealed duffel bag. She had packed it the day she retired, telling herself she would never open it again. Inside were her combat utilities, her gear, her tools of war, everything she would need if she ever went back. Her hand touched the zipper, paused, pulled away. She went back to the balcony, picked up her phone, and typed a response to the recall order. Message received and understood. However, I am formally requesting replacement by alternate Ghost Unit operator. I have fulfilled 12 years active duty, earned honorable retirement, and completed my service obligation. I am willing to provide complete tactical briefing and operational support remotely, but I am not available for field deployment. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The response came within 30 seconds. Request denied. No alternate operators available with required skill set for this specific mission. Threat level classified above top secret. Executive Order 732 Alpha allows no exceptions. You have 48 hours to report. Non-compliance will result in federal arrest warrant. Elena closed her eyes. This was it. The moment her father had warned her about. The call that couldn't be refused. The duty that never really ended. She thought about running. She had the skills. She could disappear, become someone else, live off the grid. But that would mean betraying everything she had stood for. Everything her father had taught her. Marines didn't run. Warriors didn't hide. She opened her eyes and looked out at the base lights one more time. Tomorrow morning she would have to make a choice. But tonight, she still had 47 hours and 23 minutes of freedom. Her phone rang, not a text this time. An actual call. Caller ID showed blocked. She answered, Vance. Captain. The voice was male, older, with the particular gravitas that came from decades of command. This is Admiral Patterson, JSOC Commander. I'm the one who authorized your recall. Sir, I know what I'm asking. I've read your full file, including the classified portions. I know about Helmand Province. I know about your father. I know you've earned your retirement 10 times over. Then why recall me, sir? Because 3 days ago, a joint task force attempted to extract a high-value intelligence asset from a compound in northern Syria. The mission went bad. 3 operators killed, 2 wounded. Assets still trapped. We have 72 hours before the asset is moved to a location we can't reach. After that, the intelligence they possess falls into hostile hands, and we're looking at a catastrophic loss of operational security across the entire Middle East theater. Elena's tactical mind was already processing. What makes this mission require Ghost Unit specifically? The compound is a converted monastery built into a cliff face. 3 approaches, all heavily defended. Standard assault would result in 90% casualty rate. But in 2017, during Operation Cerberus, you infiltrated that exact compound, using a route no one else even knew existed. You got in, eliminated 6 targets, extracted critical intelligence, and got out without being detected. The only other person who knew that route was your spotter, and he was KIA in Afghanistan in 2020. She remembered the monastery, the cliff face, the impossible infiltration that had taken her 3 days of preparation and 16 hours of climbing. That route requires specific physical parameters, small frame, high strength-to-weight ratio, advanced climbing skills. There are other operators. We've screened every active Ghost Unit and Force Recon operator. No one fits the physical profile and has the climbing certification. You're 5'4", 125 pounds. The route you used has sections where larger operators physically cannot fit. We've confirmed this through reconnaissance. Sir, I haven't done technical climbing in over a year. We have a facility standing by. 48 hours of refresher training with the best climbing instructors in the military. Then insertion in 72 hours. She was quiet for a long moment. What's the asset's identity? Classified, unless you accept the mission. Then I can't make an informed decision. Patterson paused. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy. The asset is Lieutenant James Choi. Elena's breath caught. Choi. Lieutenant Choi, who had mocked her in that corridor, who had challenged her weapons skills, who had become her assistant instructor and learned humility and skill in equal measure, who had deployed to Syria 3 months ago with a specialized task force. He's alive? For now. Wounded but mobile. He's holding position in the monastery's lower levels with the extracted intelligence. But hostile forces, no, he's there. They're bringing in specialized breach teams. Our window is closing. Sir, you're telling me one of my students is trapped, and you need me to extract him using a route only I know. Yes, Captain. That's exactly what I'm telling you. She closed her eyes, saw Choi's face the day of his graduation from her advanced course. The pride in his expression, the gratitude. He had told her she had made him a better operator, a better man, and now he was trapped in a Syrian monastery, waiting for a rescue that might never come. If I do this, she said slowly, I want guarantees. I extract Choi, deliver him and the intelligence safely, and my recall is complete. I return to retired status with no further obligation. You have my word, one mission, then you're done. I want that in writing, sir. Official orders specifying one-time reactivation with return to retirement upon mission completion. You'll have it within the hour. And I want my choice of team. I don't work with operators I don't know. Captain, the team is already assembled. Then disassemble it, sir. I'll work with Lewis Miller if he's cleared for the mission, and 2 others of my choosing from my current student roster. Or, I don't go. Patterson was silent for 10 seconds. Done. Submit your roster within 6 hours. But, Captain, Lewis is a good operator, but he's young, green. Are you sure? He's ready, sir. I trained him. I know what he can do. All right. 6 hours for roster submission, briefing at Andrews in 48 hours. And Captain? Yes, sir. Thank you. Choi is a good man. He deserves a chance. Yes, sir. He does. The call ended. Elena sat in the darkness of her balcony, feeling the weight of the decision settling onto her shoulders, like old, familiar armor. She had tried to walk away. She had done everything right, retired honorably, taken care of her father, built a new life. But the warrior's path had one more curve, one more mission, one more impossible task. She pulled out her phone and sent messages to Lewis, Miller, and 2 of her top students. A female force recon operator named Davis, no relation to the instructor, and a SEAL named Rodriguez, no relation to the disgraced chief. The messages were identical. This is Captain Vance. I need you for a classified operation. High risk. Volunteer only. If you're interested, reply within 1 hour. No questions until briefing. The responses came within minutes. All 4 accepted without hesitation. Elena opened her laptop and began writing the tactical plan. The monastery, the cliff face, the impossible infiltration route she had thought she would never use again. She pulled up satellite imagery, recent reconnaissance photos, intelligence reports. She studied the terrain with the intensity she had brought to every mission, looking for changes, updates, new threats. By sunrise, she had a complete operational plan. Infiltration route, timeline, contingencies, extraction scenarios. She sent it to Patterson with a note. Mission viable with estimated 73% success probability. Recommend insertion during new moon phase in 6 days for optimal darkness. Team will require specialized equipment list attached. The response came 20 minutes later. Plan approved. New moon insertion confirmed. Equipment requisition authorized. Report to Andrews 600 tomorrow for team briefing and climb refresher. Godspeed, Shadow Wolf. She closed her laptop and finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of what she had agreed to. One more mission, one more impossible task. One more chance to prove that Ghost Unit operators never left anyone behind. Her phone buzzed. A text from Stone. "Heard you got recalled." "Want to talk?" she replied. "Not much to say. Duty called." I answered, "That's what Marines do." "Your father would be proud." She hoped so. She really, really hoped so. The next morning, Elena arrived at Andrews Air Force Base at 500, an hour early. She had packed her duffel, said goodbye to her apartment, and left instructions with her lawyer about what to do with her belongings if she didn't come back. The briefing room was deep in the classified section of the base. When she entered, Lewis, Miller, Davis, and Rodriguez were already there, along with General Harrison, Admiral Patterson, and a room full of intelligence analysts and mission planners. Lewis stood when she entered. "Ma'am?" "At ease, Petty Officer. We're all equals on this mission." She set down her gear and faced the room. "All right, let's get started. I assume you've all signed the non-disclosure agreements and been briefed on the security classification?" Nods all around. "Good. Then here's the situation." She pulled up the satellite imagery of the monastery. "This is our target. Former monastery, now a fortified compound, used by a hostile force I can't name in this briefing. 3 days ago, a joint task force attempted extraction of a high-value asset. Lieutenant James Choi, currently trapped in the lower levels with critical intelligence." She saw the shock on Lewis's face. Choi had been their instructor, their mentor. Now he was the mission objective. Standard assault is suicide. The compound has 3 approaches, all heavily defended. But there's a 4th route. She zoomed in on the cliff face. "Here, a climbing route I used in 2017. It's technical, it's dangerous, and it requires a very specific skill set. That's why we're here." Miller studied the image. "Ma'am, that's a vertical climb of, what, 800 feet? 847 feet, Sergeant. With 3 sections that overhang and 1 traverse that's 53 feet with no protection. We'll be climbing at night, with combat loads, under time pressure." Davis, the female force recon operator, leaned forward. "What's the weather window?" "New moon in 6 days gives us optimal darkness. But there's a storm system moving in that could hit our insertion window. We have a 12-hour window to make the climb, infiltrate, extract Choi, and get back down before sunrise." Rodriguez, the SEAL, asked the critical question. "What if we don't make the time window?" "Then we're trapped inside a hostile compound at sunrise with every enemy in the region looking for us. Our extraction bird leaves at 0630 regardless of whether we're on it. Miss that window, and we're on our own for escape and evasion across 70 miles of hostile territory." The room went quiet. Patterson stood. "I won't lie to you. This mission has the highest risk profile of any operation I've authorized in my career. But Lieutenant Choi is running out of time, and the intelligence he's protecting could save hundreds of lives. Captain Vance has the tactical plan. You have 6 days to train, and you all have one more chance to walk away right now. No questions asked." No one moved. "Outstanding." Patterson nodded to Elena. "Captain, they're yours." For the next 6 days, Elena pushed her team harder than she had pushed anyone in her life. They climbed until their fingers bled, until their muscles screamed, until the movements became automatic. She drilled them on the monastery's layout, on contingency plans, on what to do if she was killed, and they had to complete the mission without her. On the 4th day, Lewis pulled her aside after a particularly brutal training session. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why me? I'm the youngest, least experienced member of this team. Why did you choose me?" She looked at him steadily. "Because when I was teaching you, I watched you fail 12 times on the advanced tactical course. And every single time you got back up, figured out what went wrong, and tried again with a better approach. That's what this mission needs. Not the most experienced operator. The one who won't quit when it all goes wrong. And it will go wrong, Lewis. It always does. I won't let you down, ma'am. I know you won't. That's why you're here." On the 6th day, they loaded onto a C-130 for the flight to the staging area. As the plane lifted off, Elena looked at her team. Lewis's youthful determination, Miller's steady professionalism. Davis's quiet competence. Rodriguez's focused intensity. These were her people now, her responsibility, her mission. The flight took 8 hours. They landed at a forward operating base in a location Elena wasn't cleared to know, transferred to helicopters and inserted under cover of darkness 5 miles from the monastery. The hike to the infiltration point took 3 hours through rocky terrain that seemed designed to break ankles. At 02:30 hours they reached the base of the cliff face. Elena looked up at vertical rock stretching into darkness above them. And for just a moment, she felt doubt. It had been so long. What if she had lost the edge? What if her skills had dulled? Then she remembered Choi's face in that corridor. His mockery, his apology, his growth into a man worth saving. She clipped into the rope, checked her gear one final time, and began to climb. The first 300 feet went smoothly. The rock was solid, the handholds where she remembered them. Behind her, she could hear her team climbing steadily, their breathing controlled, their movements efficient. Then they reached the first overhang. Here, the rock jutted out at a 15-degree angle, requiring climbers to essentially hang upside down while moving laterally. In daylight, with modern equipment, it would be challenging. At night, in full combat gear, it was nearly impossible. "Hold position," she whispered into her radio. "I'm going across first to set the line." She swung out onto the overhang, feeling her core engage, her fingers finding purchase on holds that were sometimes just rough patches of rock, feet smearing against the vertical surface, arms burning with the strain of supporting her full body weight, plus gear at an impossible angle. Halfway across, her right hand slipped. For one heart-stopping moment, she dangled by 3 points of contact, combat gear pulling her backward toward a fatal fall. Then, training took over. She pivoted, found a new hold, and continued the traverse with mechanical precision. 2 minutes later, she reached the far side and secured the safety line. "Traverse line set. Come across one at a time." Lewis went first, moving with the controlled aggression she had taught him. He made it across in 90 seconds, breathing hard but solid. Davis crossed next, her movements so smooth and controlled that she barely disturbed the rope, natural talent meeting expert training. Miller followed, his experience showing in how he managed his energy, never over-gripping, never wasting movement. Rodriguez came last. 20 feet into the traverse, his foot slipped. He swung wide, pendulum-like, slamming into the rock face. Elena heard his grunt of pain through the radio, but he maintained his grip, repositioned, and completed the traverse with a determination that would have made her proud if there had been time for pride. They continued climbing. 400 feet, 500, 600, each pitch harder than the last, each movement consuming precious time and energy. At 700 feet, they reached the crux, the hardest section of the entire climb. A 53-foot horizontal traverse on a ledge so narrow that climbers had to sidle along it with their backs to a vertical drop and their faces inches from rock. No safety line possible. One slip meant death. Elena went first again, moving with the precision of someone who had done this before and knew exactly how close to disaster she was operating. 30 feet across, 40, 50. Her right foot found the small platform that marked the end of the traverse, and she exhaled fully for the first time in minutes. Traverse complete. Come across one at a time. Take your time. Do not rush. If you slip, you die and the mission fails. Lewis came across. His youth showed in his speed. Too fast, but he had the grip strength to maintain control. He made it. Davis crossed with calculated precision, testing each foot placement before committing her weight. Miller moved like he was walking on a sidewalk, his experience translating into a calm that verged on casual. Rodriguez started across. 20 feet in, a rock chip broke loose under his foot. He froze, pressed flat against the wall, breathing in controlled bursts. Elena watched, unable to help, knowing that any attempt to assist could cause them both to fall. "Rodriguez," she said quietly into the radio. "You're okay. Reset your foot position. Find the hold 6 inches to your left." He moved slowly, found the hold, continued. 40 feet across, he made the mistake of looking down. She saw it in his body language, the sudden tension, the slight backward lean. "Eyes on the rock," she commanded. "Nothing exists except the next foot placement. Move." He moved. 50 feet. 52. 53. He reached the platform, and Elena pulled him the final few inches onto solid ground. "Good," she said simply. "Now we climb." The final 147 feet were technical but manageable. At 04:15 hours they reached the cave entrance that marked the infiltration point. They had made the climb in 1 hour and 45 minutes, 30 minutes ahead of schedule. Elena checked her weapon, confirmed everyone was combat ready, and led them into the monastery's hidden passages. The intelligence briefing had been accurate. The passages were empty, forgotten by the current occupants who didn't know this route existed. They moved through darkness using night vision, following a mental map Elena had memorized years ago. Every turn was where she remembered it. Every passage led exactly where it should, until they reached the chamber that should have connected to the lower levels and found it collapsed. Rockfall, recent, completely blocking their route. Elena studied the rubble, calculating. The mission window was closing. They had 6 hours until sunrise. Going back and finding another route would consume at least 3 hours they didn't have. "Ma'am?" Lewis looked at her, waiting for orders. She examined the edges of the collapse, looking for gaps, weak points. There, a narrow space at the top where some rocks hadn't quite settled. "Maybe 18 inches wide, maybe. I'm going through," she said. "If I can confirm the passage is clear on the other side, we'll widen this gap and continue. If not, we abort and try an alternate route." "Captain, that gap is barely—" "I know, Sergeant. But I'm the only one small enough to fit. Hold position." She stripped off her combat vest, her gear, everything except her weapons and radio. Even thin, even small, the gap looked impossible. But Choi was trapped on the other side, and operators didn't leave operators behind. She squeezed into the gap, feeling sharp rock edges scrape her shoulders, her ribs, her hips. She exhaled completely, making herself as flat as possible, and inched forward. Rock pressed against her chest, her back, her skull. For one claustrophobic moment, she was stuck, unable to move forward or back, just trapped in stone with the weight of the mountain above her. Then her fingers found purchase on the far side. She pulled, felt something give, pulled harder. The rock scraped skin from her shoulders, her back, but she was moving forward. Her head emerged, her shoulders, her torso. She fell through, onto the far side, landing hard on ancient stone. Breathing in gasps. "Through," she reported into the radio. "Passage continues. We can widen the gap from this side. Stand by." She used explosive charges, carefully placed and shaped to create maximum effect with minimum noise. The explosion was muffled, controlled. The gap widened to 30 inches. Her team came through one by one, and they continued into the monastery's depths. At 07 hours, they reached the lower level, where Choi was holding position. Elena used the agreed-upon recognition signal. 3 taps, pause, 2 taps. The response came immediately. 2 taps, pause, 3 taps. She opened the concealed door and found Choi huddled in a maintenance alcove, leg wrapped in makeshift bandages, rifle covering the approach, eyes hollowed with exhaustion and pain. "Captain Vance?" He sounded like he didn't believe what he was seeing. "They said you might come, but I didn't think— I mean, you're retired, you're—" "I'm here, Lieutenant. Can you walk?" "Yes, ma'am. Leg's bad but mobile. I've got the intelligence. Everything they sent us to get." He held up a small, encrypted drive. 12 operators died for this. I wasn't going to let it fall into the wrong hands. Good man. We're leaving now. Can you climb? His face went pale. The cliff route, ma'am. With this leg. I didn't ask if it would be easy. I asked if you can do it. He met her eyes and saw the same determination she had shown in that corridor 18 months ago. Yes, ma'am, I can do it. They moved through the monastery's passages, Choi limping but keeping pace, adrenaline and training overriding pain. They reached the cave entrance as the sky was beginning to lighten. Bosse fought 7 hours. 43 minutes until their extraction window closed. We have to move faster, Elena said. The climb took us 1 hour, 45 on the way up. We have 43 minutes to get down. That means controlled descent, fast rappel wherever possible, and absolutely no mistakes. They rigged the rope, secured Choi in a special harness that would allow them to manage his descent, and began dropping down the cliff face at speeds that would have horrified any safety-conscious climbing instructor. 200 feet down, the dawn light revealed their position to a hostile patrol. Gunfire erupted from below. Rounds sparked off rock 5 feet from Elena's position. "Incoming fire!" Miller shouted. "We're exposed." Elena made the calculation in half a second. They couldn't go back up. They couldn't stay here. They had to go down, directly into gunfire, and do it faster than their enemies could aim. "Combat descent," she ordered. "Lewis, Davis, suppressing fire. Miller, Rodriguez, drop with Choi. I'm going first to clear the landing zone." She kicked off the rock face and rappelled in bounding leaps, 20 feet at a time, while Lewis and Davis provided covering fire from above. Rounds whipped past her. One creased her thigh. She barely felt it. Another tore through her uniform near her shoulder, missing flesh by inches. She hit the ground, rolled, came up with her weapon raised, and engaged the hostile patrol. 3 targets, 3 rounds, 3 down, training and combat experience, translating into mechanical precision. "LZ clear. Drop now." Her team came down in controlled falls, bringing Choi with them. They hit the ground, formed a defensive perimeter, and began moving toward the extraction point at a tactical run. Choi supported between Rodriguez and Miller. Elena on point, Lewis and Davis providing rear security. The extraction helicopter was inbound. They could hear the rotors in the distance. But between them and the landing zone was 300 meters of open ground and an unknown number of hostile forces alerted by the gunfire. "Captain," Miller said over the radio, "we've got movement left flank, at least 2 squads converging on our position." "Keep moving." Lewis, Davis, prepare to break contact. "I'll hold them while you get Choi to the bird, ma'am." "No," Lewis started. "That's an order, petty officer. Get Choi on that helicopter. The intelligence he's carrying is more important than any of our lives. Move." They moved. Elena positioned herself behind a boulder formation with clear sight lines on the approaching hostiles and began engaging targets with methodical precision. 1, 2, 3, 4, suppressing fire to keep them from flanking her team. The helicopter touched down. She saw her team load Choi, saw the pilot gesturing frantically. 30 seconds until they had to lift off or risk taking fire that would down the bird. She fired her last magazine, dropped the empty weapon, pulled her sidearm, and sprinted for the helicopter. Rounds kicked up dirt behind her. Someone was shouting in Arabic, close enough that she could hear them over the rotor wash. 20 meters, 15, 10, 5. She dove through the helicopter door as it lifted off, pulling her inside. Rounds pinged off the armored hull as they climbed, but they were airborne, clear, safe. Elena lay on the deck, breathing hard, adrenaline draining away to leave exhaustion in its place. Choi was secured in a seat, medics working on his leg. Her team was intact, scratched, bleeding, exhausted, but alive. "Mission complete," she said into her radio. "Assets secure, intelligence recovered, no friendly KIA." Patterson's voice came back. "Outstanding work, Shadow Wolf. Welcome home." The flight back to friendly territory took 4 hours. Elena used that time to write her mission report, debrief her team, and finally allow herself to process what had just happened. She had gone back. She had done the impossible thing one more time, and now, finally, it was over. When they landed at the forward operating base, an officer was waiting with official papers. Elena read them carefully. Formal orders concluding her recall to active duty and returning her to permanent retired status with full honors. Admiral Patterson had kept his word. She signed the documents, handed them back, and walked away from military service for the second and final time. Lewis caught up with her at the transport plane. "Ma'am, I just want to say, working with you on this mission was the honor of my life. What you did, how you led us, the way you never quit, even when it seemed impossible. That's what it means to be a ghost unit operator. That's what I'll remember for the rest of my career." She studied his young face, saw the warrior he had become. "You did good, petty officer. You all did. Be proud. Will you ever come back? To teach, I mean." She thought about it. "I don't know. Maybe. Maybe I've earned the right to figure out who I am when I'm not Shadow Wolf. Maybe I get to just be Elena for a while." "I hope you find that, ma'am. You deserve it." 2 weeks later, Elena stood in her apartment in San Diego, staring at a stack of job offers. Military consulting firms, defense contractors, government agencies, all of them offering substantial money for her expertise. She set them aside and pulled out her laptop, opened a blank document, and began writing. Chapter 1. What they don't tell you about being a warrior. If she couldn't serve by doing, she would serve by teaching. Not through classified missions or combat operations, but through words. Through sharing the lessons she had learned in 12 years of war. Through helping the next generation understand what service really meant. Her encrypted phone buzzed. She had kept it just in case. The message was from Choi. "Ma'am, I'm back stateside, legs healing. I wanted to thank you properly. You didn't have to come for me. You'd earned your retirement. But you came anyway. That's what Marines do. Semper Fi, Captain. If you ever need anything, I'm here." She smiled and typed a response. "You would have done the same for me, Lieutenant. That's what we do. Take care of that leg. The Corps needs good officers like you." A second message appeared, this one from an unknown number. "Captain Vance, this is Secretary of Defense Morrison, no relation to your petty officer. I'm writing to inform you that you've been selected for the Medal of Honor for actions during Operation Broken Arrow. The ceremony will be held at the White House in 6 weeks. Your presence is requested but not required. However, I hope you'll attend. The country should know what you did." Elena stared at the message for a long moment. The Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration, the one recognition that truly mattered, but receiving it meant publicity, meant exposure, meant the end of any hope for a quiet life. She thought about her father, about his pride in her service. She thought about the operators who died so Choi could escape with that intelligence. She thought about Lewis, Miller, Davis, and Rodriguez, the team that had trusted her to lead them through the impossible. She typed her response. "Mr. Secretary, I'm honored by this recognition, but I must respectfully decline. Ghost unit operators don't receive public commendations. Our work is classified, our identities protected. Accepting this award would compromise operational security for every operator currently serving in similar roles. I hope you understand." The response came 30 minutes later. "I do understand, Captain, and your decision only reinforces why you were selected. The medal will be placed in your file as a classified commendation. But know this, the highest levels of government are aware of what you've done. Your service will never be forgotten." Elena closed her laptop and walked to her balcony. The sun was setting over San Diego, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Below, the base lights were coming on, illuminating the training facilities where she had taught, the corridor where everything had changed, the parade ground where she had been honored. Her phone buzzed one last time, a text from Miller. "Captain, heard you decline the Medal of Honor. That's the most ghost unit thing I've ever heard. Your father would have been proud. We're all proud. Enjoy your retirement. You earned it." She smiled and set the phone down. For the first time in 20 years, she had no missions pending, no objectives to complete, no enemies to engage, just time. Time to write, time to heal, time to figure out who Elena Vance was when she wasn't being Shadow Wolf. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of salt water and distant storms. Somewhere in the world, other operators were preparing for other missions. The warrior's path continued, as it always would. But for Captain Elena Vance, USMC, Force Recon, Ghost Unit 7, retired, the war was finally over. Real warriors don't advertise. They do the job, save the lives that need saving, and then go home to the people they love. They know when to fight and when to hold position. They understand that sometimes the greatest act of courage is choosing peace over glory, family over fame, and life over legend. Elena Vance had fought. She had served. She had sacrificed. And now, finally, she got to live. The sun set over San Diego, and Shadow Wolf watched the darkness come, unafraid, at peace, and free.